Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the YouTube channel. I am John Kurtz. We talk college football every single day here on this channel. Right now, that means we talk conference realignment every day here on this channel. If you're a Big 12 fan, if you're a college football fan, please do click subscribe if you have not. I try to give the Big 12 a voice here on this channel. It does not seem to have much of one nationally right now. And hey, like the video, comment on the video, all of that stuff helps me out as well. Today, as we continue to look around the Big 12 and get different perspectives on what's happening with conference realignment, we go to Waco, Texas. I've got David Smoak from Sikkim 365 Radio. Does a tremendous job. Those guys have an awesome YouTube channel. You should check that out. I'll put a link in the description here as well for you to do so. They kill it every single day. And we had a great chat about all things conference realignment, the Big 12, and specifically what's happening to Baylor. So some good info here and a good take on why the Big 12 was really doomed from the start. And I'm not talking about the start as in a couple of months ago. The start as in back in 1996. Also, how big of a hurdle is it for Baylor to clear being a religious school when you think about potential Pac-12 merger possibilities between the two leagues? And does Baylor's national championship help them out at all in basketball headed into realignment? Here is my conversation with David Smoak.
Well, it's always easy to be angry at Texas, or sometimes they're the 800-pound gorilla, and by the way, they love to tell you that too, and that's not taking a shot at them. That's true. And so there's always been kind of like, we know that they like to tell everybody how that they're the biggest whatever in the room. And this was for this fan base, 80 miles from Texas. This fan base was, oh my God, we're going to have to go through this again. Now listen, Baylor was very fortunate in 1996 when the Big 12 was formed that they did not get left out like a TCU or Rice or Houston or SMU. So they were fortunate, and they took a lot of heat for that because some political battles, whatever. They did what they had to do. And then when all that went down, when A&M, or before that Nebraska and Colorado, then A&M and Missouri, there was this dark, like, oh, my God, this is about to split up again because Texas and Oklahoma and the Pac-12 or whatever else, and who was going to be left out. So Kansas State's been through this as well. And it's like, oh, God, here's another, are we going to deal with this again? I think everybody. I think unless they're like completely clueless, that everybody among the remaining 8 realizes that, they've done pretty much all they can do. For example, you're Kansas State. You've had good football success, and you've done what you can do. Your enrollment is what it is. TCU's enrollment is what it is. Baylor's size of their enrollment is what it is, and what Texas Tech or Oklahoma State or even KU, and you can only do so much. It's not like you can become a 12 to 15 or 25,000 enrollment and then you're 50. Just because you can have success and all you want, but that doesn't mean that all of a sudden Manhattan or Waco or Lubbock can become, let's just say Austin, Texas, or dominate a major market because of eyeballs. And it's kind of like they can only be who they are. But you know what? Part of this to me in the Big 12, and I hope I don't get off on a tangent, John, is that Oklahoma has carried their weight. Oklahoma has won one after another in the last at least 10 years since the last realignment. They've taken care of their football business. We know Texas brings in a ton of money. We know about the Longhorn Network. We know the history there. We know that they have the biggest budget, and they'll also tell you they also bring in the most revenue, and that's who they are. And yes, they're a powerful entity or whatever, but they haven't carried their weight the last 10 years on the field. They could have the biggest audience, the biggest alumni base, the biggest everything, biggest budget, biggest whatever. But you know what? What if they would have accidentally maybe been better for 2 or 3 years among the last 10? Maybe they could have won an extra Big 12 title or two. Maybe they could have won the national title in 2009 when they lost to Alabama. And maybe Oklahoma could have won among the many times they've been close and won a national title. And maybe that would have helped the Big 12 even more, and also end the constant thing we get that the SEC invented football and they're the greatest conference in the history of mankind. And in some cases, we know they're dominant in what they do thanks to Alabama and a couple of others. But I do think that most of it is, guys, hang on. Guys, girls, hang on. Everybody, to me, and I told you this, John, the Big 12 is as strong as the weakest link. And that's the 8 remaining teams. Oklahoma, Texas, they're gone. Whenever it is after this year, in 2 years, in 4 years, they're gone. The only way that these other 8 are going to make the kind of money they're making now is to hold together and even maybe get more, because if Oklahoma and Texas do try to get out early, we know the story about the penalties and granted rights. to me, what has made the Southeastern Conference so special is not just their success, but you don't hear Alabama trying to criticize who Vanderbilt is. You don't hear Georgia making fun of maybe Mississippi State. That doesn't mean that some of them don't like each other. We know Alabama and Auburn hate each other as much as anybody in America. But they have always been as one. Like, for example, even when the Texas and Oklahoma story come out, there's no way, and you know what, that A&M's going to vote to accept that. Maybe not even Missouri. Maybe not LSU. Maybe not Arkansas. They had a unanimous vote. They let A&M kind of, voice their disapproval, get a little bit angry, kind of snort, and then guess what they did? They unanimously accepted two people into their conference that some of those schools can't stand and don't trust because they're always united. And they are, even though they have all the national titles and all of this, you know what? Vanderbilt matters. Mississippi State matters. South Carolina, I know that's a pretty big school, they matter. And that's what the Big 12 never was able to do from the beginning of the 96. There's always a lack of trust, and so that's why I think the best option, I think this is the one Baylor would like. Of course, they want this for Iowa State and Kansas State and everyone else too, don't get me wrong. Stick together, get whatever money you possibly can, and then if something does pop, then we'll look at it, whether it's expanding or possibly being a part of somewhere else. But I think that everybody to a man that I hear, you'll get silly speculation that West Virginia's joining the ACC. Not that that's silly, or Kansas is going to the Big Ten. We know where that's been. Texas Tech and Oklahoma State, they got to go to the Pac-12. All of this is just rampant speculation. The 8 have to stick together, and they have to truly trust each other. And if they do, I think I just down in my gut, I think they survive.
David Smoak is talking with me right now from Sikkim 365 Radio in Waco. And Bob Bowlesby has had his meeting now with the commissioner of the Pac-12 for 6 hours. There was a lot of discussion about that and what can come from that, whether it's going to be a scheduling alliance or eventually perhaps a merger. And there have been talks, too, of teams splintering off into the Pac-12. Another thing that gets brought up a lot, and I'm very curious to hear what the vibe is around Waco on this. It gets brought up a lot. Hey, does the Pac-12 really want TCU and Baylor because they're small, private, religious affiliated universities? How much of a roadblock do you foresee that actually being? How much talk of there is that around Waco right now?
Oh, it's there. I mean, it's there. And we've kind of seen TCU, which was always Texas Christian University. They want to be known as TCU. The Frogs. They have not that they haven't, that they're still not a private school. They're smaller than Baylor by a lot. Like probably maybe 2,000 to 4,000 or 5,000 students. I might be wrong there. I get enrollments wrong all the time. Baylor's embraced theirs. Now, listen, I know you could say that, and then Baylor's also had their, dark days. But no, Baylor's pretty much still embraced theirs. Now, they've had a lot of changes since President Livingstone came to campus on a lot of things that otherwise were there's no way. Even like the LBG, whatever the LBGT or Q or whatever, that's now something where at least there is a voice on the campus, which I never thought I would see, only because of what Baylor used to be or what I'm talking about, years ago. And I think it is an issue. I don't think there's any question. Brigham Young, they're not going to be a part of the Pac-12, and they're right there attached to Utah, who they added, and because of what we know about the Mormon faith and some things that they believe in or don't. And that's a big school with a massive alum. You talk about, fan base and whatever else, but they're kind of stuck right there in the middle of nowhere. And I'm not just saying because of Utah, just because of some things that they either believe in or they are not going to bend. But I do think that Baylor and TCU do have that hurdle. There's no question about it. Now, if it's going to be an alliance to where there's scheduling, maybe a game or two or whatever that is, or maybe movement towards at some point, listen, I don't care how like for example, I'm just going to use this. This may not be a good example, John. Tell me if I'm wrong. But let's say the Pac-12, which it's not like they've been the strongest conference ever either. Let's say they broke apart. But let's say that Cal, Berkeley, And, I don't know, Stanford, which of course is a powerful athletic department. They got the huge endowment as well. But let's say that those two were left behind. Not saying they would be, but let's say they were. And the only place for them to go was the Big 12. And I'm not saying that would happen, but they could only go to the Big 12. People are going to look at them differently because of some of what they believe in, whether it's because one of them is as liberal as you could possibly be or because of any of whatever they think. Now, those aren't Christian schools, don't get me wrong, but hey, in this day and age, when you're trying to survive to be a part of whatever the Power Fives are going to be, autonomy schools, 64, 36, 28, 48, I don't know what the number's going to be, you have to think outside the box when it comes to that as well and not be so stubborn that you let whatever your, not beliefs, don't give up your core beliefs, but whatever you do, you're going to give up being a Power Five because you don't want to be attached to a school that's a religious school or some sort of a liberal school. I think that would be short-sighted, and you're probably going to find yourself in trouble.
And I think you're right. When the rubber meets the road on a lot of that, if it's going to be the best option financially for everybody else, we know what will ultimately happen there.
I mean, when we're talking about millions and millions of dollars, now some schools are losing money, but they have massive endowment and they have massive alumni base or whatever. It's not like Oregon's got Phil Knight, and I'm just using Oregon as an example. Not everybody has Phil Knight, you know? What did he do the other day? He got like $500 million for some sort like a building. I mean, everybody has their sugar daddies. Everyone, and I mean that in a positive way. That probably sounded like a bad donor. I'm talking. Everybody has a guy or a girl, a woman or a business that can write a huge check to keep them going. But I think when it comes down to when you're talking about $30, $40, $50 million a year in television revenue and whatever it goes to, if they're streaming, I think you're going to have to kind of lower a little bit of your ego or lower a little bit of your arrogance if, in fact, it can help you survive as a Power Five or whatever we're going to call the next level of football.
David, before I let you go, I think I know pretty much the answer to this. And, in fact, Stuart Mandel I've had tell me, hey, it's 80-20. Football, 80% of all of this, 20% is basketball. You're talking about TV contracts, realignment. But does this basketball national championship help Baylor out a decent amount at all? How much does it help out?
Well, it's better than if they hadn't won it, and it's better if they had made a Final Four appearance, and it's even more exciting the fact that they can sit there and, Baylor's athletic department, Texas just won that Sears Cup, but Baylor's athletic department has been really successful for over a decade now, pretty much across the board. Now, they've dipped in and out. Baseball didn't make the tournament. They've had a couple of disappointments. Football's had the 1-11 after the scandal, 2-7 last year, and a lot of that, like a lot of teams dealt with COVID and a first-year coach. I think it cannot hurt. I think there's two things. Winning the national championship, now that's not going to prop them above too many, but winning that national title and being as good as they've been over the recent years, and the way they did it, that was I know Kansas State, Iowa State don't want to lose to Baylor and all that, but the way that team did it, you talk about as many things at times that Baylor's been through because of, bad decisions. That team, you could love that team. You could fall in love with that team. And if you really got to know them, you could easily embrace them, And so the answer is I think that absolutely helps. And I also think that today's decision is a part of helping them as well. Now, does it prop them ahead of a lot of others? It's not going to put them in that top 25 or 30 of all the big boy schools. It's not. But what Kansas State, Iowa State, and what Baylor and others and TCU have to do is put all their chips on the table, and this is who we are. Don't read what people say we are. This is who we are. Look at our picture, and then if you want to make a decision, that's fine. But don't just go by perception. Greatly appreciate David for taking some time for me. That's another clip from my daily radio show. You can find it wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. Just search The Game, KMAN, and you can get more of that every single day. I would also encourage you to follow me on Twitter. It's JL Kurtz, JLKURTZ. And I have another K-State specific podcast called Lock It Up with Kurtz that you can find on YouTube and wherever it is that you get your podcasts. So plenty of ways to get in touch with me. Like and comment on the video, DM me on Twitter. However it is you want to get in touch with me, I welcome all of the conversation. Thanks a lot for checking out the channel, and I'll talk to you soon.